Let's make it shorter, and here's our finished sound. I've also added a little bit of reverb. Hello and welcome to haQ attaQ. My name is Jakob, I'm your host, and you're watching a haQ attaQ episode. For those of you who have already seen part 1 of this series, just jump to this mark and the tutorial will start. For those of you who haven't seen my first episode, I can tell you that I'm currently working on a psychedelic trance track where I'm sampling all of the sounds from a Volca Bass into Cubasis on an iPad, where I'm just mangling the sounds, EQing them, processing them to create a various range of sounds: drum sounds, bass sounds, chord and lead sounds. And in the first part, we made a kick drum, and in this one, we're gonna make a snare drum. So without further ado, let's get into this. Now, when I make snare sounds using synthesizers, whether it's a hardware synthesizer or a software synthesizer, I always build my snares out of 2 sounds that I layer. One for the body of the snare and one for the top layer of the snare. And we're gonna start with the top layer. To make the top layer of the snare, I usually try to get as close to white noise as I can with a synthesizer. Now that's very hard with a KORG Volca Bass, but I'll show you a few tricks. We're gonna introduce harmonics into our sound to the point of distortion, and we're actually gonna be doing a bit of FM synthesis here. And to do that, we need to send the LFO to control the pitch of the oscillator. But not only that, we're also going to send the LFO signal to the filter. We need to hold down function and then go to the LFO target menu and press buttons 5 for pitch and 6 for cutoff. And now we are effectively sending the LFO signal to both the pitch of the oscillator and the cutoff of the filter. This is what it sounds like now, and let's increase the intensity of the LFO and the speed. Let's up the octave. Next, we need to control the amplitude of our sound with the envelope generator. And to do that, we need to send the signal of the envelope generator to the amp. And we do that by holding down the function button and pressing 12, amp EG on. Let's make it a little bit longer. And let's sample it. Let's move this up here and let's trim it. And here's our sound. Now we want to filter off the low frequencies of this sound, and we do that with a high pass filter. And now we're going to distort our sound with a distortion module, and I'm going to be using an overdrive. After that, we just need to put a compressor on here. And now we add another filter. Next, I think the sound is too long, so I'm gonna turn off the quantization and just make this sound shorter. There we go. Next, we need to create the body of the sound. So we're gonna go to channel number 2 and back to the Volca Bass. Now we need to turn down the LFO, but we don't really have to turn off the functions here. We can just leave them on. We're also gonna keep the amp EG on because we still want the ability of shaping the overall amplitude of our sound. Right now, we have a saw waveform loaded, but we need a square waveform. And so to change that, we need to hold down function, go to the first oscillator here and press 8. Now we have a square waveform. Next, we're gonna filter off the high frequencies with the cutoff and shorten down our sound. All we need to do now is sample it. And there we go. Now again, we're gonna turn on the equalizer and we're gonna filter off the high frequencies this time. we're also gonna filter off a bit of the low frequencies. We don't want our snare drum to fight with the bass or the bass kick. Next, we're gonna add a little bump around 200 hertz because that's where the body is of a snare drum. So turn on this node, move it to 200 hertz, increase the cue point. And now we're gonna add a compressor. And at this stage, we just need to mix these sounds together. You know what? Let's filter off a little bit more of the snare. And then all we need to do is to bounce this sound, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. KORG Volca sampling, SD. And now I can remove these channels, bring this sample in, and here's our snare sample. And from here on out, we can continue filtering and processing our snare sound to make it sound even better. Let's make it shorter, and here's our finished sound. I've also added a little bit of reverb. And this is just one way that you can make your own snare drum sample from a Volca bass. Now, you can make this snare drum sound very different from this, depending on how you tweak the sound before you record it. So I do suggest you experiment with this a lot. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 in where we're making a kick drum, then I suggest you go watch that. You can find a link down in the description and also at the end of this video. You can also find a playlist with the videos I've made so far featuring that psychedelic trance track that I'm making using the KORG Volca Bass and Cubasis. Thank you so much for watching. All comments and ratings are very much appreciated. I've also got a Patreon page, so if you want to support creativity and good content here on YouTube, videos like this one, then why not sign up on Patreon? Now, if Patreon isn't your cup of tea, then I've also got a that's Dusty. I've also got a PayPal me link, so you can do a one-off donation if you'd rather do that. Now, I'm also an Apple affiliate, so whenever I feature an app or something like that, I always put an app link down in the description, so whenever someone purchases an app through one of my links, I earn a small percentage of that app price. So that's also a great way of supporting vloggers, bloggers, YouTubers like myself. Now, if you don't want to do any of that, then you can always share my videos, press the thumbs up, because that really helps with the ratings around here. And if you subscribe, don't forget to press in the little bell thing, because that way you'll get notified whenever I upload a new video. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.